Also helping out will be Veronica Curion, who's available to help with translating into Spanish if anyone would need any help. Veronica, you want to just say hi?
Hello. Did you want me to go ahead and give my Spanish?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Buenos días, mi nombre es Verónica Carrión, seré la traductora. Si necesita alguna parte de esta junta traducida en español, por favor déjemelo saber. Si está utilizando un teléfono celular, puede escribir su pregunta en la burbuja de chat. Le leeré su pregunta al equipo para que puedan responder, o puede levantar la mano y le activarán el audio para que pueda hacer la pregunta usted mismo. Y yo le traduciré su pregunta para que el equipo responda. Si su pregunta está relacionada con una diapositiva específica, de anotar el número de la diapositiva para facilitar la discusión. Gracias.
Thanks, Veronica. Okay, so today we have Sam Stevenson, Senior Transportation Planner, who's going to be presenting today, and Eric Iverson, Tempe's Transit Manager, is also on our panel. Today's meeting is being recorded, as I mentioned, and will be posted to the website tempe.gov/transit changes, probably by noonish on Monday. Before we get started, some information on how to participate. Sam's going to run through his presentation. Afterward, we'll have a question and answer period. You can either type your question into the chat or the Q&A session, and I will read them for the team to answer, or you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you and you can ask yourself. If you have a question related to a specific slide, you might want to jot it down as we're going so that we can come back to that if we need to. So to raise your hand, find your name in the participant list, hover over it, and a hand icon will appear. Just click on that. That'll put a hand by your name and we'll know that you want to speak. Or you can put it in the chat, either way. If you're on a cell phone, click on the chat bubble. I will take questions in the order that we get them, or as best we can. We have another person joining us. Welcome, John. Let's see. The comment period for this topic closes on October 25th. And all the comments that are made here do not actually become part of the official record. You'll need to go to the survey to actually give us that feedback. So that again is tempe.gov/forum. Okay, I think that about covers it. Sam, over to you.
Thanks, Laura. And I want to take a quick second to thank everyone for joining us for our virtual meeting this morning. We'll do our best, as Laura mentioned, to address all the questions at the end of the presentation. We do have my contact information listed on the last slide, so please take note of that and feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any other thoughts after the meeting. And with that, I'm going to get started. We do have quite a lot that we'd like to cover today, and we anticipate that this will be the first of many public meetings on the topic of transit service reductions. Next slide, please. And here's a quick overview of the transit services that Tempe offers today. We consider our transit network to be multimodal, meaning that we offer a wide variety of transportation options for people to consider. Those options include local bus routes on our major arterials, the Orbit Circulator, which connects to many of our neighborhoods, 3 commuter express routes, complimentary paratransit services, light rail, and then looking ahead, the Tempe streetcar. Next slide. We've also made considerable improvements to our bicycle and pedestrian programs over the years with our streetscape projects and also our multi-use paths. These improvements are definitely complementary to our transit network. And now I'd like to provide a very high-level explanation as to how our program is funded. The single largest contributor to Tempe's transit taxes our transit system is our very own transit tax. We passed that back, it was passed by the Tempe community back in 1996, and it's a 0.5% sales tax dedicated to the transit system and its improvements. It does not sunset or expire. The ballot language for that initiative is included here on this slide on the right. Other revenue sources that we rely on include the regional Proposition 400 tax, which is a regional sales tax, and it's due to expire in December of 2025. This funding also helps us to provide some of our transit services. We also receive federal funding for many of our capital expenditures, including new vehicle purchases like new buses and facility construction projects. Fare collection is another means we have to subsidize our operation, although I will say it's been declining over the years. Our fare box recovery rate has been declining. And really the big picture here is that many of our revenue sources depend on the state of the economy. So currently our expenditures are exceeding the revenues that we're able to bring in. And so with the intent of sustaining our transit system for years to come, we're anticipating the need to make some reductions in our transit system expenditures. Next slide. And here's an overview of what we're expecting that will look like. And I want to preface this by saying our plans are going to be fluid and very flexible as we monitor and learn more about the health of the economy in the coming months. With that in mind, and because we want to hear from you and take the time to develop meaningful service changes that minimize the impacts to the public, we're proposing a 2 to 3 year reduction with service changes proposed incrementally every 6 months. We want to place an emphasis on data-driven decision-making. We have transit system performance data and also equity data that we must also consider. And again, we'll be focusing a lot of our efforts on outreach, so please get involved because we definitely want to hear from you. About a 2-part survey that's been released today, or actually that was released on Thursday, and the public comment period extends through the 25th of October, and I'm going to get into the details of that survey next. So please, Tyanna. Again, I'd mentioned that our survey is broken into 2 parts. The first part asks some questions about how you use the transit system today, and then your values and priorities for transit as a member of the Tempe community. We'd like to know what features of our transit system are most important to you. Is it frequency of service, early morning or late night service, or maybe the fact that the orbit system is free to ride? These are all things that we hear are valuable to the community. Essentially, we're trying to understand what areas we'd like to protect as we consider areas that we may need to propose a reduction of service for future service changes. Next slide, Tyanna. Then, moving through the survey, we get into some specific questions for a handful of proposed service changes that, if advanced, would become effective in April. These are all proposed changes that staff have developed based on some recent studies and performance data just to begin the service reduction process. For each of these changes, and I'm going to go into each one of these in greater detail, we want to know if you'll be impacted, and if so, what level of impact the proposal will have on you. Next slide. So the first change that we're proposing is to Route 32, for which the current route is shown here. This route runs between Central Phoenix near the Biltmore area along 32nd Street, then serving Sky Harbor, and then head south on 40th Street before entering Tempe along Baseline Road, where the route ends near Arizona Mills. Next slide. We're looking to adjust the south end of the route as shown here. Essentially, we're eliminating the duplication of service from Baseline Road, which is also served by routes 48 and 77. Connections between Route 32 and 77 will still be possible at 40th Street and Baseline. Next slide. Next, we're proposing a change to Route 40, which runs along Apache Boulevard to the Price Road Park and Ride in Tempe. Next slide. Similarly, we're aiming to reduce the duplicated service here. The route would no longer operate in Tempe and would likely only run in Mesa between the Sycamore Transit Center and the Superstition Springs Transit Center. Light rail also runs east and west on Apache and Tempe, and of course will continue to do so. Orbit Mercury is also nearby, within a quarter mile actually, on Victory Lane, as shown here on the map. Next slide. Our next proposed transit service change, Route 72. This route runs north and south through Tempe, Scottsdale, and Chandler along Scottsdale and rural roads. Today, the route deviates from Rural Road into the downtown Tempe Transit Center, as shown here, the area within the box actually on this map. Next slide. We're proposing an elimination of this deviation. The route would simply remain on Scottsdale and rural roads within Tempe. This is being proposed because, similar to other proposals, there are many other transit options available to connect between Rural Road and downtown Tempe. These include the light rail, Orbit Mars and Mercury, the Flash, and routes 30, 48, and 62. Additionally, this change will allow passengers who do not have a destination in downtown Tempe to travel north or south more efficiently along Scottsdale and Rural Road. Next slide. Next, we are proposing some significant changes to each of our express routes. Historically, we've shown a reduction in express bus ridership over the years, and we like to try and attract new ridership by making these routes more efficient and providing a more effective connection between Central and South Tempe and downtown Phoenix. To start, we're proposing with the elimination of Route 520 and a redesign of Route 521. The new Route 521 will run nonstop between the park and ride location at McClintock and Baseline and then provide nonstop service to downtown Phoenix without making the lengthy deviation through the neighborhoods that it makes today. This will enable us to speed up the service and hopefully attract additional users because, again, we've noted a decline in ridership on this route. Finally, Route 522, which currently has two variations, one that runs to 48th Street in Elliott and another to Elliott and River, will also be simplified and will run nonstop between the park and ride lot at the Tempe Sports Complex and downtown Phoenix. Again, we want to know exactly how each of these proposed changes will impact you specifically. I emphasize the word proposed because we want your input to help guide the outcome of these decisions. Next slide. So I'm going to show you exactly how to navigate to our survey. The web page we've set up for the project is at tempe.gov/transit changes. So it's tempe.gov/transit changes. And from there, there's a link that takes you to the survey, and that's shown here on this slide. The arrow is pointing right at the link from our web page that takes you to our survey. Next slide. Once you're there, please read through all the questions. Again, the first part of the survey is geared towards the values of the community. And for example, one of the questions here is asking you to pick your top 3 most important features of our transit system that you'd like for us to try and maintain as we propose future reductions. Next slide. The second part of the survey asks about each of the specific service changes that we're proposing for April of 2021. And for each of these proposals, we'd like to know how you might be impacted. At the end of the survey, there's a section for you to include your contact information, which is optional, but we recommend doing so because, as I mentioned, we expect to be back with additional transit service change proposals over the next couple years. And we'd like to hear from you as the process further evolves. Looking ahead, here's our timeline. We presented to the Transportation Commission and Council earlier in the month, and we're here today at one of our online public meetings, the second public meeting that we're holding for this cycle. The public comment period will run from September 24th through October 25th. Valley Metro will also be conducting some outreach for all transit service changes that are proposed for the entire region, not just those here in Tempe. So please feel free to submit your feedback to them as well. Once we've analyzed all the feedback that we received, we'll be returning to our Transportation Commission and Council with an update in December. And again, I want to mention that we expect this will be the first round of many meetings and presentations regarding transit service reductions. At this time, we anticipate having another set of service change proposals to present for consideration in the spring. Next slide, Tiana. And with that, I'll turn it over for any questions. The link to our webpage is listed here, as well as my contact information. And now I'm going to turn it over to Laura, who's going to make sure we address any questions that you have for us. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, anyone, questions? Right now, I don't have anything in the chat or in the Q&A. I'm happy to unmute you if you would like to ask it live. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and unmute both of you, and feel free to jump in anytime.
Again, we do have a copy of this presentation uploaded on the webpage that's listed here. Our survey's linked there. We'd love to hear from all of you. Please go on and take our survey. You know, there's a lot of opportunity to provide your suggestions improvements for us as we move forward through this. And we'll be posting this online as well in the coming days.
Hello,
Yes, go ahead.
it's John Federico. I'll just ask one question. Sam, in terms of the 72 proposal, what is going to be the stop? Where is it going to stop along Rural Road?
Yes, thanks for that question, John. And that's very important consideration for us. So we're actually proposing a new stop for the northbound direction, which would be on northbound Rural Road on the northeast corner of Terrace and Rural. So just across the street from the light rail station. So we placed a bus stop, hoping to work a shelter into that. We think that's very important as well. The property was queued up for a development review, and I've heard that isn't moving forward as quickly. So we're seeing what we can do in the near term in terms of providing amenities there, but in the long term, we definitely hope to have well built shelter and all the regular amenities that we strive to provide, because we recognize that that's a very important connection between light rail and Route 72. For the southbound direction, we're going to use the bus pullout on southbound Rural Road, just north of, I guess on that side of the street, it's Tyler Street. So the back side of the light rail station, basically. So just around the corner from all the other transit connections, including light rail and the orbits. There's already a shelter and a bus pullout located there. We currently use that stop for our Flixbus service, but we'll work with them to find a more suitable location so that we don't have conflicts between the 72 and the Flixbus. So that's what we're thinking for now. Let us know if you have any thoughts on that proposal.
Thanks. I'm just thinking of someone perhaps who's taking the 62 and needs to go to Chandler or Scottsdale, what they would have to do to get to the 72.
Yes, great question. That's a great example. So in the case of the 62, the optimal transfer point would be at University Drive and Rural Road. So we currently have in the northbound direction a bus pullout and a bus shelter just on the north side of University for the 72, and that will remain a bus stop and possibly even a time point for the route. In the southbound direction, the transfer, I mean, it's a very short distance. The bus pullout it basically straddles the block between University and Tyler Street. So hopefully not too far of a walk. It would just be more of a traditional transit connection, transfer at one of our major intersections versus at a transit center. And we recognize that there are some pros and cons to that. Really, I should also speak to some of the reasons why we've been looking at this for a long time. And one of the challenges we've had in more recent years, and this is pre-COVID, but as the congestion on University Drive has kind of ramped up over the years, the 72 we struggle to maintain reliable level of service. I mean, when the traffic is unpredictable during rush hour, it's hard for us to predict how long the bus is going to take, and therefore hard for us to create an accurate schedule. So we've heard some reliability issues. Our figures for on-time performance for the 72 have been lower than what we'd like to see, and we've tried a number of different strategies to try and improve on-time performance without a whole lot of success over the years. But I do think this is really going to help maintain a better sense of reliability for this route. So hopefully more people can depend on it. That's our hope, at least. I'm pretty confident that we will.
And a last question, is there any way that there would be an idea to reroute any of the orbit buses to assist in this transfer?
Yeah, so we don't have any immediate ideas for that, John. But what I will say is there are currently 3 orbits that help make this connection, right? So we have orbit Mars and Mercury in the Tyler Street Station. During the week, those are each every well, actually, the Mars is every 15 minutes, the Mercury's every 10 during the daytime peak hours. So we hope that that's a pretty quick and convenient connection. Orbit Earth also, beginning in October, will connect at Rio Salado and Scottsdale Road. And then, further south, the Jupiter also connects to the 72. There's some others. The only one that doesn't is the orbit Venus. As you know, that one, the furthest east that really goes is College Avenue. And we haven't really talked about extending that specific route at this time. It's definitely something that we'd have to consider, weighing the pros and the cons, also with the budget. And of course, right now, we're trying to reduce expenditures, but we want to do so while minimizing the impact. So definitely we can consider that. There's also the route 65 and 66 that currently has a more convenient connection with the 72 at the transit center today. And of course, if the 72 doesn't go there anymore, it wouldn't connect so conveniently. So when we did the study for downtown Tempe Transit, the downtown Tempe Transit study, we looked at potentially rerouting those routes into the Tyler station. But we're not proposing to do that at this time because the percentage of transfers between those routes from our surveys is very, very small. And we don't believe that it's necessary at this time, but we're definitely open-minded. Like I said, we want to, make sure that it's convenient for people to use, and we don't want the impacts to be so enormous that it's a burden for people to continue using the system.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you for the questions.
Well, if there's no other questions, maybe we'll end the meeting. Last call for questions. Anybody? All right. Well, thank you for coming. We appreciate you taking the time out of your Saturday to hear about this topic. And as a reminder, one more time in the chat, we do have a link to the survey right there at tempe.gov/forum. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
You too.